Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is going to be my first tutorial about Firebase. I just started learning about Firebase this week, so this is just going to give you sort of an overview. This is a service of Google, so in the same way that like Heroku acts as kind of like an abstraction over Amazon Web Services, even though Heroku is like a third-party thing. Um, Firebase acts as like an abstraction over Google's cloud services. So it just makes all of Google's cloud services much easier to use, for a developer. Okay, it's sort of geared towards. Now, again, you can always go more custom and just work directly with the Google Cloud Console and set up your VPSs and do all this fun stuff. But this kind of gives you a lot of the real nice out of the box tools and ease of use. It makes it much more pleasant to work with the Google Cloud. Okay, in the same way Netlify and Heroku make it a lot easier to work with like Amazon Web Services. Okay, so essentially here I created a project, so you can always just go over here and create projects and whatnot. So once you log in, again, the website's firebase.google.com. Go sign up. It's free with every Google account, and generally you have free tiers with every plan. So unless you suddenly create the next Facebook and you get a lot of traffic, you might not necessarily get a bill. Of course, you always want to be secure to make sure that people don't accidentally like use your stuff. So like I probably will delete this project the minute this video is over. Okay, but once you create the project, you're gonna click on this gear. This I can't show you because you'll accidentally see my API key. But you're gonna click here on settings, and it's gonna take you to another page. And what you're gonna want to do is at the bottom, you're allowed to add an app, because basically every project, to get sort of your API key and your authentication space and all this stuff, you have to connect it to an app. Okay, so basically there's apps and then there's projects. And then once you connect your project to an app, at the end it's going to give you all the code to configure your permission, the connection, your credentials for your eventual project. Okay, and then what we're going to want to do is provision a database. So I'm going to go to Cloud Firestore. Think of Cloud Firestore kind of like Google's version of MongoDB. It's a document database where so it saves data as sort of JavaScript objects instead of saving them as like tables and rows or columns and rows as like an SQL database. So I can go here and I will create a database. Okay, so I'll go boop, create a database. Okay, I'm gonna start in test mode, which means anyone can access it. Okay, and it'll only do that for 30 days. So after 30 days, it'll go back to a more secure version. And what's cool about Firestore, so let's see here, after you set your location, you cannot change it. That's fine. We're going to delete this afterwards anyways. Okay, then it's going to create your database for you. And the cool thing about Firestore or Firebase in general is that you don't necessarily need to create a backend server. You can actually interact with your database directly from your front-end code. They'll give you script tags that you could just plop in your script tags. The only downside is if you put that in your front-end code, everyone will see what your credentials are. So then it becomes really important to make sure that you set up like users with different permissions. So that way, sort of like whoever has whatever credentials you use to attach your front-end code, like only has like read permissions. So that way nobody else tries to like write stuff to your database and delete stuff from your database. So to me, it still probably makes more sense whether you're using like Mongo Realm, which is sort of what they renamed Mongo Stitch to be. Whether you're using Firebase, it's still probably worth having that intermediary server, that backend server to sort of hide the stuff. Okay, which then it doesn't become all too different. So then this becomes more like using Mongo Atlas, where you just have a remotely hosted database, but still pretty cool. Okay, so basically here I have my database console. Okay, and I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so let's go over to VS Code. Okay, now that it's been created, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up this Firebase 2 folder. So you already have all my configuration. So what I did is I took that configuration object that has like all my details, all my sensitive information. I put it in an object in this config.js file, and it's exporting it. So that way you guys can't see it. So if you're wondering where those details are, that's where they are. Actually, no, I'm not gonna create another file. What I wanna do is open up the terminal here. Okay, and what you want to do is you want to download the Firebase CLI tools, which would be npm i-g Firebase tools. I've already installed it, so you would install this, and then once you have it installed, you would then type in Firebase login. You would then log in using your Google account. Okay, and then you'd be able to use your Firebase tools attached to your Firebase account. And then now that I'm in this folder, I want to connect it to that project that I made. So I'm going to type in Firebase Init. Okay, Firebase Init. And again, Firebase Init doesn't create a folder for you, so you want to do it in your project folder. So this is not like using like Vue CLI or Create React App where it creates a folder. This is going to kind of like more like when you initialize an npm, it creates the files in the folder that you're in. So here you would choose which Firebase services you want. I'm going to want the Firestore database, not the real-time database. I'm not talking about that yet. And see, it has a lot of cool services and hosting, so we can actually use static hosting. So I'm going to choose those two services, hit enter, and then I'm going to use an existing project. Okay, so I'm going to choose the Firebase test 2 because that was the one that we had set up. And what file should be used for Firestore rules? I'm going to accept the defaults. Okay, these are just configuration files that I'm still not sure how to use yet. Okay. And I'm not going to configure this as a single page app. There you go. And so basically what you end up having here is that now I have this public folder, which is, you know, where like I can put my website. So here's my index.html, and any files I put here will be served when I deploy. And now I can start working with the database. So I'm going to create a new file, db.js. This is where I'll work with the database. I need to actually install. Do I have a package.json in here yet? No, not yet. So let's initialize an npm project, npm init-y. Okay, and then I want to install Firebase, npm I Firebase on the project level. So that's going to install. Okay, then I bring in Firebase, const Firebase equals require Firebase. Okay. Okay, so now what we want to do is also I want to bring in that config object. So const config equals require. Okay, and then this needs to be a string here, so I'll just make that a string. Const require dot slash config. Good. Okay, so then all I have to do is Firebase dot initialize app, and then pass in the config object. And what this does is that this will create an application object, so it'll take this Firebase object and make sure that it knows that it's connected to this particular app. So that way I can use all my features. And then essentially all your features, all your databases, all your authentication, all the cool stuff you have on Firebase is all accessible to this app. For this video, I'm only going to work with Firestore. So Firebase.Firestore, okay, is kind of how I would use this. Okay, so I'm just going to say database equals this. So that way we have, so I want to type in Firebase all the time. Okay, so now that I have this database object, I should be able to do stuff with it. So db.collection, so this allows me to connect to a particular collection at a database. I don't have any, but I'm pretty sure that if I just decide to make one, it'll just make it. So let's try that. So we'll say dog. Okay, so I want to create a collection called dog. And then we're going to create a new document. Okay, so we're going to create a document. We have to give it an ID of some sort. So we'll say doc with an ID of 1. And we're going to set that dog to have a name of Sparky and a age of 5. Okay, let's run the code, see if it runs fine. So it'll be node db.js, node db.js. Okay, that looks like it didn't give me an error, so that's a good thing. So I'll kill that connection. And then let's go back to our thing here. Let me refresh this page. Let's see if we see, and there, look, see, we see a new collection called dog. And let's see if we see a new document in here. Okay, we see a document with the ID of 1, and it's Sparky age 5. Cool. Okay, so that's how you would create a document. Oops, wrong file. Okay, cool. So now let's say I want to go get that document, but let's make a few more. So let's, we'll just copy this line a few times. So we'll say we also want Spot, Butch, and Clifford. So we add them. Oops, nope, cancel that. Node db.js. Cannot find module. Oh, okay, somehow ended up back in the wrong folder. So let me just close this. There we go. Node db.js. Okay, and again, I'm not going to see any output because I didn't ask it to give me any kind of output, and it doesn't automatically close the database connection, so I have this connection that's kind of running and open right now. So I'm going to kill that connection. Make sure that these things got added. Cool. No, I don't see that these things got added. Oh, I see why. Okay, because I kept referring to the same ID. So I kept overwriting the same dog, so I have to make it separate IDs. Okay, so let me run that again. And hit Control C. Now let's refresh again. And now we see 3 dogs. Cool, okay. Now let's say I just want to get the first dog, okay? So let's show how the get stuff now. So that's how I would add a record at its most basic level. Okay, now I want to just get, let's say I just want to get that first dog. So it would be .get. Okay. And we'll just say const query equals db.collection. So basically this is a promise. So then what we can do is we'll do query.then. So when that promise is done, okay, we're going to get back results. Or we're going to get back a document. Okay, so we're getting back one document. And what I want to do is console. We want to double check to make sure that in case we didn't get it, that we don't get an error. So it's like if docs, that means if it actually, it's undefined. Okay. Then let's console.log that individual document's data. Okay, and this will actually return the data. Else, do nothing. Okay, else console.log don't have what you're looking for. Okay, and see, I got back the spot. Okay, so again, basically, when I search for one thing, I get back a document, and then the document has a function called data that actually returns the data. Okay, so I can't just, it's not like Mongo where you just get the raw data back. Okay, you have to run that function to actually reveal the data. So what if I want to get like all of them? Okay, so let's just say I get rid of this and I just say I want the collection. So document.get. So in that case, we'll say I'm going to get multiple docs. Okay, so we're going to say docs there. And then what I have to do here is I have to loop over that array. So docs dot for each. Okay, and then we'll say doc. And then for each doc, we're going to console.log doc.data. Because again, each individual document has the data object. Here we're getting an array of docs because we queried for the whole collection. Okay, so let's try that. And there we go. So it looped over the items and console logged each one. Okay, that at its most basic level, that's kind of how it works. So you can add stuff to the database, and you know, deleting. There's other functions for deleting and updating stuff, but you get the basic idea. You create the database object, then you just play with the collection, specify the collection, and you just keep doing stuff to it. Okay, now let's try something here. What if I did this collection? This is just me experimenting now. Dog, can I actually just save the collection in there as well, so I don't have to type the collection every time, and then just do this. Let's see if this would still work. Okay. And that still works. So you could just do that right off the bat, specify your collection, so that way this is just automatically a connection to that particular collection, and that probably is a little bit easier. There's a couple other ways of doing things, but I just want to give you guys a very brief introduction just to show you that, okay, this is not hard to set up. And then on top of that, okay, again, I have this stuff inside this public folder. So let me just go back to that. So here's just an index.html. Okay. So I'm not going to even edit it. I'm just going to hit to Firebase deploy. And when I hit Firebase deploy in here, it's actually just going to deploy this project because we have it set up. Cool. Okay, and now if I go to the website here, so let's see a project hosting URL. Let's follow the link. Yep, just open it. So you get this default hosting page. Okay, so you can host stuff with Firebase pretty easily, and you can use its database pretty easily, and then you could use it using script tags. So you don't have to use Node. So you wouldn't have to. So I could technically in this public folder, could have created a JavaScript file, linked it up, put all that stuff in the script tags, and done all that manipulation of the database from the front end. Again, the only catch is then all that code is exposed. So then you have to really make sure that you set up users and different kind of controls to limit access. But aside from that, that's the basics of Firebase. It's pretty cool. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy.